8. Cow foot soup. Butchers would set cow feet aside because no one with money ever wanted them. There was barely any visible meat, just bone, cartilage, and tough skin. But that was precisely what made them so valuable to the families who knew what to do with them. After simmering slowly for 6 or 7 hours, all that collagen would break down into a broth so thick and rich that it would turn almost gelatinous once it cooled. Add a few potatoes, some dried chili, and a little onion, and that single cheap ingredient could stretch into 2 full days of meals for an entire family, all for just a handful of cents. The smell drifted out through the screen door and down the street, and the children playing outside already knew dinner was coming before they even walked in. Their grandmother did not know anything about collagen or mineral content. What she knew was that a cow foot cost almost nothing and her children were hungry. Today most young people have never seen a cow foot in a pot. The texture unsettles them. But that throwaway ingredient kept more families fed than any expensive cut of meat sitting behind the glass at the butcher counter. 7. Blood sausage. When a family in rural Oaxaca slaughtered a pig, absolutely nothing went to waste, not even the blood. It was caught in a bowl while still warm, mixed with chopped onion, fresh mint, oregano, and chili, then stuffed into the cleaned intestine of that same animal and boiled for hours. The blood cost nothing. The intestine cost nothing. The herbs grew right outside in the yard. Every single ingredient was essentially free. For families who could only afford to slaughter 1 pig per year, this dish represented a deep commitment to wasting nothing, not a single drop of that animal. Your body craved it even when your mind hesitated at the sight of it. The problem is that today health regulations have made home slaughtering and fresh blood collection nearly impossible in most places. And the grandmothers who knew exactly how much mint to add, exactly how long to boil it, are disappearing one by one. When they go, that knowledge goes with them, and there will be no written record left behind. 6. Braided goat organs. In the ranching country of northern Mexico and South Texas, when a family slaughtered a young goat, the organs had absolutely no market value. Nobody was buying heart, liver, or kidneys. So the women would take the intestines, clean them patiently until they were almost translucent, and then braid them tightly around the chopped organ meat, forming a kind of rope that was tied off at both ends and placed slowly over mesquite coals to grill. The intestine casing would turn golden and crispy on the outside while the organ meat inside cooked down into something tender and deeply flavorful. This dish was never considered a luxury or a delicacy. It was a practical answer to a very real problem. There were parts of an animal that no one would pay for, and there were mouths that needed protein. The braiding technique itself was precise and difficult to master. Too tight and the inside would not cook through properly. Too loose and the whole thing would fall apart over the fire. You can still find this dish at a traditional slaughter celebration in certain parts of northern Mexico, but the women who knew how to braid it are getting older every year, and the younger generation is simply not learning. 5. Toasted corn powder. Ground toasted corn reduced to a fine powder. The Raramuri people of the Copper Canyons in Chihuahua would run 100 miles through rugged canyon terrain on nothing more than this powder mixed with water. 100 miles. No energy gels, no electrolyte drinks, just toasted corn carried in a small pouch. Farm workers took it dry in their pockets when they headed out to the fields before dawn. It needed no refrigeration and no preparation whatsoever. A handful of powder stirred into a cup of water gave you enough energy to push through an entire afternoon of hard physical labor under the sun. It cost almost nothing because it was made from the one ingredient every Mexican family already had sitting in the house. You could eat it dry, drink it stirred into water, or cook it into a thick warm porridge. It was the original energy bar, fueling people for centuries before anyone had ever invented the word calorie. Today it has been replaced by commercial protein bars that cost $3 each and contain a fraction of the actual nutrition. 4. Wild edible greens. The grandmothers who worked the traditional cornfield did not pull out the wild plants growing between the rows of corn. They ate them. Dozens of species that modern agriculture simply labels as weeds. These plants required no planting, no watering, and no money. They appeared on their own alongside the corn each season, and the women who worked that land knew exactly which ones were safe and nourishing to eat. For families who could not afford meat, These wild greens were the difference between a diet of pure starch and one that actually provided real vitamins and minerals. Then industrial farming arrived. Herbicides wiped out everything that was not the main crop. Families moved to urban neighborhoods where there was no traditional field, no open soil, no wild plants to gather anywhere. And the knowledge of which plants you could eat, passed down by word of mouth for over 1,000 years, began vanishing within a single generation. Nobody wrote it down because nobody believed that grandmother's weeds were worth documenting. That turned out to be a catastrophic mistake. 3. Purslane in green sauce. Purslane grows in sidewalk cracks. It grows in empty lots, along fence lines, and anywhere else without anyone ever planting it. Calling someone a purslane eater was a genuine insult, a way of saying they were desperately poor. And many of those families were exactly that. What nobody understood at the time is that purslane is one of the most nutritious plants on the entire planet, containing more omega-3 fatty acids than almost any other leafy green vegetable you can name. What they did understand was that it was completely free, it filled the stomach, and that when you stewed it in a green sauce made from tomatillos and serrano chiles it actually tasted genuinely good. The leaves would soften and melt into the sauce while the stems kept a slight satisfying crunch. A grandmother might stop on her way back from hanging laundry, pick a handful from the edge of the yard, and walk into the kitchen with dinner already in her hands. A full meal for the whole family from a plant that nobody cultivated and nobody paid for. Today most people under 40 have never tasted it. The shame of eating a weed outlasted the recipe itself. 2. Bean-dipped tortillas. When yesterday's tortillas had gone completely stiff and last night's beans were sitting cold in the pot, nothing got thrown away. Those leftover beans were blended into a smooth dark sauce. Each hard tortilla was dipped into that sauce, folded over, and laid onto a plate. Maybe a little crumbled fresh cheese on top. Maybe nothing at all. That was the whole dish. An entire meal built completely from two things that were already leftovers, costing the family not a single extra cent. In Oaxaca, cooks elevated this into something remarkable using black beans and avocado leaf. But the survival version had no garnishes and no ceremony. There was a plate of bean-soaked tortillas, a family gathered around the table, and that was dinner. In the United States this dish barely exists at all. Its fancier cousin, the enchilada, took over every menu and every restaurant across the country. But the grandmother knew the truth. You did not need cheese sauce from a can or any special filling. You needed yesterday's beans and today's hunger, and that was always enough. 1. Crispy tortilla scramble. The name means crumbs, and that is exactly what this dish was built from. When tortillas dried out and turned too hard to eat, they did not go in the trash. They were broken into rough pieces, dropped into a little hot oil until they crisped up and turned golden brown, and then scrambled together with eggs. Maybe a diced tomato. Maybe a hot chili. 2 eggs and a handful of stale tortilla pieces could feed 4 children a full breakfast for about 35 cents. In San Antonio and throughout the border region, this was the sound of Saturday morning. The sharp crackling of tortilla pieces hitting hot oil. The immediate sizzle of eggs poured over them. Today, restaurants in trendy cities serve this dish topped with avocado and goat cheese for $14, turning poverty food into a brunch aesthetic for people who have never known what it actually means to need it. But the original version, the one grandmother made because the tortillas had gone hard and there were only 2 eggs left in the house, that version does not appear on any menu anywhere. It lives only in the memory of people who ate it because there was simply nothing else.